I'm just wondering
Was
how
that
you.
who it was?
Yeah, he posted a screenshot of Romano. And,
Let me see. Where was?
I'm just interested in how you came to find that.
I have no idea.
Fabio Tapinski is Kyle's number one Twitter follow. Keeping up with all the news. Who's going where?
More than anything is
2
probably
hours
someone
after
that.
they
No, you know what? It's probably Manny. It's probably from Manny.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Manny's a Man United fan.
Probably be a Manny. But regardless, no. Hate to.
Mike, because Mike's a Spurs fan.
It could have been. It's something like that. I assure you, I have not followed anything soccer related.
I hate your sport.
You guys ready?
It's rough, it's irritating, and it gets everywhere.
It does get everywhere.
Hey folks, welcome back to Watch More Football. Another week of Premier League football, but maybe more importantly this week, some FA Cup and Europa League stuff to talk about as well. As always, I'm Cam, that's Ryan, and producer Kyle is here as well. You're watching us on Genreverse Sports, so check out all our previous shows on there if you want. While you're there, also check out our main Genreverse YouTube channel. Do you like anime? Because if you do, you will find tons of content on there that you like. If that's not your thing, there's also some stuff on there like Wheel of Time and all reviews as well that you might like. We've also got written content like that on lrmonline.com. I write on there, so there's Kyle, and so there's many other people bringing entertainment news, rumours, and we've also got our interview team doing loads of creative interviews with loads of entertainment people or people in the industry. So anyway, as always, we're going to start off with our kind of predictions table and where things stand. And suffice it to say, the predictions league is going to go down to the wire, isn't it, Ryan?
It is. We've had a big swing in this week. So we were saying that Dave was riding off into the sunset, but you've clawed it back, Cam. Yep. You got 10 points. Dave got 4. Mick got 8, which just about keeps him interested. More on that later. And Kyle has as well and truly pulled away from me, and he should break the 200-point barrier quite comfortably this weekend, I should imagine. And just I'm going the way that Man United are going.
Yeah, it's your season has been quite like your teams.
Yeah.
We were just saying Ryan's fake Man United top that he's wearing when we were off air is very representative of all this season is really worth for Man United at the moment. Anyway, so that's good. It's good that there's only 1 point in it, 2 points in it, or something like that?
2 points. 2 points at the top. Dave's on 253. Cam, you're on 251, and Mick is on 241. So Mick is still,
and I think, technically
there, but something ridiculous will have to happen. But we'll cover that in full. Yeah, we'll cover that in full at the end of the podcast, I think. Yeah.
And in terms of between me and Dave, definitely looking at the predictions, we've not got exactly the same, so there's room to manoeuvre for both of us to have a final week. So
has Dave done what he normally does? Has he predicted? He has predicted his Chelsea loss, so that's an interesting.
Of course, yeah. But I mean that could happen. I wouldn't be completely amiss to that happening. For us, they're at home. Some massive game, they could beat Chelsea,
I mean, the only one who's predicted a Chelsea win's an American, but that's getting ahead of ourselves right now. So we'll go on to Team of the Week, I guess.
Yeah, we should. We should probably.
Yeah. So it has to be stressed. We're going to be talking mainly about the 2 cup finals that happened this week, but the Team of the Week is a strictly Premier League endeavour. So there are quite a few names who I think could have a claim from the FA Cup final or the Europa League final, but they won't be in there.
No, I don't think anyone from the Europa final, but we'll get there. But the FA Cup final, I grant you, but we haven't done that. We didn't do that with the League Cup final, or else it would have been all Newcastle players. We didn't do it. We haven't done it for any other competitions the rest of the season, so it's fair that it's just purely Premier League for sure.
Yeah. But in goal, we've got David Raya from Arsenal, who single-handedly kept Newcastle out, really, in the first half. It was very one-sided in the first half, and then Arsenal came out in the second half and really sort of didn't give Newcastle the sniff after that. But without Raya's saves, Newcastle would have been 2 or 3 up at half-time, I think.
I think we still had chances, but again, we didn't do enough with them, and Arsenal defended them, whether it be Raya or, as we'll see, we've got some other Arsenal players in there as well. Yeah. So.
Then right back, we got Reece James, who it was not a very good game between Chelsea and United on Friday, but James came up with 2 moments of quality. First half, he had a sort of shot on the half volley from outside the box that was just one of those ones where you just catch it really nicely and just sort of slice your boot over, and it just sort of spun round everyone and just kissed the post. It was just, you know, the sort of volley that anyone wants to be able to
pure technique.
Yeah, you know, really deserved to have scored, but unfortunately just hit the post. And then second half, when the game was petering out, he comes up with quite a good turn in the box to cross for Cucurella. That is my Amazon delivery. Sorry, guys. He came up with a really good turn in the box.
Delivery companies are available.
Yeah. Good turn in the box and cross for Cucurella to get the winner from Reece James. So he's in, and he got into a bit of argy-bargy with a couple of United players at one point as well. So fair play to him. Next up, we got Ezri Konsa, who kept Spurs under 12s out on Friday at the same time. I didn't watch any of this game because I was too busy watching United, but he was one of your shouts, wasn't he, Konsa?
No, I must have been either Dave or Mick.
Okay.
No.
I seem to recall he got a goal, or he got an assist. So
I think Dave might have watched more football than us, and Mick might have watched more football than us this weekend, actually.
Right, Dave, comment in, tell us why Ezri Konsa's in the side, or that Aston Villa fan from the other week. He can tell us why Ezri Konsa's in the team of the week. Next is Jakub Kiwior. I've got to say, I paid more attention to the first half of the Arsenal Newcastle match than the second half, but Kiwior was quite active in it. He was putting in a couple of blocks. He was getting involved in the set pieces as well that Arsenal had going forward. I'd say Arsenal defended well in the second half. I think the first half they needed Raya to save them a little bit, but in the second half Raya didn't have too much to do. It was more just solid defending by Arsenal and not really kind of letting us back into it. And obviously, Kiwior is sort of the, I don't know, not necessarily the black sheep, but out of all of Arsenal's centre backs, he is definitely the least vaunted one, I think. So, he had a good game in a big game. So for sure. Yeah. And then we got Ben Chilwell for Palace at left back, who scored a goal. He's had a good season. Ben Chilwell. Because I couldn't countenance having 2 Chelsea fullbacks from a game in which they didn't encounter any wide play whatsoever. So I couldn't countenance that because Dave wanted Cucurella in there.
Chilwell played well, it's fine.
Chilwell, yeah.
It's just, it's a name. It's a name I've not heard in a long time. I was just thinking more of that, Whoever thought would see Ben Chilwell back in the team of the week. So,
do you think he's related to Obi-Wan Chilwell?
I mean, maybe.
Moving into midfield, we've got Declan Rice, who scored a Declan Rice goal. He's sort of got that trademark now of just sweeping it in from 30, 40 yards out, hasn't he? When he needs to.
Yeah, it was I think Anthony Gordon kind of sold it and gave it to Arsenal,
it was poor.
I think, but the finish was excellent.
Yeah,
it was. He just hits it, and the keeper's got no chance.
Yeah, it was. It was good pressing from Arsenal, and obviously they got the ball in a good position, but it was Rice just deciding he's going to swing the boot at it that made that goal. Otherwise they would have.
It was the only way they were going to score because they were nowhere. As much as we were peppering their goal, they didn't look like scoring at all. It was going to have to be something like that. They had no strikers either playing. So and it just came at the right time for them as well. What can you do?
Yeah, and I think we'll probably talk about this in our end of season wrap, but I think he has flown under the radar for our team of the weeks previously, when actually he's been quite good for Arsenal this season as well.
I mean, he's been solid, but he's more impressive, outstanding performances have come in Europe rather than maybe some of the big games, in the Premier League. And Arsenal have kind of faded a little bit. And, there's sometimes for Rice, it's either a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 for a few weeks in a row. So, which is fair enough. But I think he's in that conversation for one of the best midfielders in the country this season overall, for sure.
Yeah. And then at the other midfielder, we've got John McGinn, who I only watched the first half of Villa versus Spurs on Friday, but he was absolutely everywhere, getting in the way of everything. Starting moves, just a proper midfield performance. Full of energy, full of nuisance, and he's
a dirty wee bastard, but sometimes it works for him well and in games, and fair play to him. The Villa fans love him.
Yeah.
I
think he's one of those players that you'd love to have in your team, just because he'll always.
It's one of them, everybody else will hate you except your own team who love you. It's just one of those players. Every team's got some.
He's a bit of a shithouse, but I don't know if it's because he's Scottish, but he's a friendly shithouse, if that makes sense. He just. Yeah, he always looks like.
I don't know. He's not really mouthy. He's just dirty. He leaves a boot in here and there. And his entire game revolves around his backside.
Exactly. It's got its own.
It's very similar to Kenny Dalglish, but just not as good as Kenny Dalglish. But plays in a very similar way, actually.
Yeah. And then the other midfielder, the number 10, we've got Iliman Ndiaye, who is in there because he scored the last 2 goals at Goodison Park. Well, for the men's team anyway, because
one of Everton's better players.
He's had a good season. And they've got a bit of a knock
during the week.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a rebuild to do in the summer, but they need to centre that around him because he is comfortably their best player, I think.
For sure. Thing is, though, can they afford to say no if somebody comes in for them? I don't know.
Because I think he's Everton's best player, but I don't think in a number 10 role he does enough for any of the top sides to need him, because none of the top sides really use a 10 anyway.
Yeah, and I guess Everton want to look to sell to someone round about where they want to be, kind of thing.
No,
I mean, it'd be different if it was a Champions League team.
Your Brentfords and Bournemouths and Brightons and Fulhams, maybe they are all looking for the next Ndiaye. They're not looking to spend 40 million on a player like that, I don't think. So I think he'll stay there next season, but we'll see. And then up to the front 3, we've got Adama Traore, who got 2 assists for Fulham against Brentford. That kept him just about in the hunt of a European place, and it was sort of a dramatic late winner in a derby game for Fulham. So that's good. Actually, no, they are out of the hunt for a.
They are place. Really, because they can only equal. I think the only team that's really in the 8th race is Brighton now, isn't it? They're kind of on
Brighton,
3 points ahead.
Brighton are currently in 8th. Brentford are 9th. But
there's 3 points gap.
Yeah, Brentford have got the better goal difference. So
we'll see. So I guess it is possible then.
But that only matters if
certain things happen, and
Chelsea or Newcastle have to drop down to 7th, which again could happen because there's only 1 point in that.
I thought it was both needed to miss Champions League in order to get the 8th to work or something.
No, because I think if Newcastle finish 7th, they get the Conference League spot. Do they? I don't know. I think if Newcastle finish, but it needs Chelsea to win their final as well, which they will do. Anyway, Adama Traore, good performance from him. And then the other wing, we've got Omar Marmoush. I've shoehorned him in because he was playing as a striker, but he scored an absolute worldie against Bournemouth. Yeah, proper dipping goal. And then we've got Jamie Vardy up front, who scored his 200th goal on his 500th appearance, and that is what everyone wants. And you'll have to do the talking for a minute, Cam.
Sure, but I mean that in terms of Vardy, that's kind of exactly what everyone was looking for. He was coming up in 500 games. He was coming up 200 goals. It was written in the stars that this was the game he had to get his goal.
Not only that, but because
finish his career with Leicester. Perfect.
Because they
shouldn't play him next week.
Well, no, they announced it even before the kickoff at the weekend. They announced that was going to be his final game, and he wouldn't play his 501st game because he wants to keep it all even.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And he deserves that because he's been an absolutely brilliant player for Leicester in the Premier League. They consider him as the best ever player.
Yeah, and
which
he won the Premier League, he won the FA Cup, and he's the top, I think, all-time scorer or something like that.
Yeah. So, well, he scored 200 goals for him, so and considering where he came from, obviously he's got and they picked him up for a pittance. So one of the good stories in football.
Yeah, for sure. Whether you like him or not as a person, because he does wrap some people up the wrong way, but that's fine.
Yeah,
we're just talking about his football career. Like Wayne Rooney doesn't like him too much.
Well, but Wayne Rooney is not a saint either, is he? So
no. Just ask the grannies. Onto the FA Cup. So massive cup upset. Palace beats Man City in the final. I don't think anyone. I mean, certainly, like from a bookie's perspective, Crystal Palace have never ever won a major trophy ever in their history. They've been in finals before, but
because all of the talk after has been they won some trophy back in the 90s, but it's such an insignificant trophy. I can't even remember the name, and I couldn't even tell you. Like, it wasn't even the League Cup.
It's not a major trophy then.
Yeah. But like that's how small time it was. It was just some like randomly sponsored trophy from a company that's now defunct, and
like the Audi Cup or something like that.
Famously defunct Audi. Yeah.
What are we going to say now? Like for Spurs as well. Like
exactly.
Success is no longer the Audi Cup.
But I mean, I think City were favourites, obviously, because they've just got the experience at Wembley, and they did them quite heavily in the last game, although Palace gave them a scare. Palace do have it in them to beat City, though.
The last couple of weeks, apart from Southampton, that was the one kind of game. But apart from that, they've been playing a little bit better. Haaland's back, Rodri's back. So you just kind of thought, well, this is it. And do you know what I loved about it more than anything else? I mean, great for Palace, for them to celebrate, never done this before in their history. So it was great for them because they're not a rival of any of us, so it's easy to be happy for them. I think
they're a likeable team. Rivals. They're a likeable team as well. They've got some really fun players to watch. They play in a fun style.
Yeah, I mean, I like them. I don't have any particular affinity for them, but great.
And you think how their cup run started as well, because they had the third round game against Millwall where 5 minutes in, Jean-Philippe Mateta gets his head taken off by the Millwall keeper. And obviously he comes, he starts the final and plays a part in the goal. So that's
for sure. But the thing I loved absolutely was Pep looking like he was going to cry, like big time, in all the press conferences afterwards. Like he looks like a broken man. He literally looks like a broken man, like he doesn't know what to do. And I never thought we would see that with Pep Guardiola. And I'm not celebrating somebody having a bad time, but for someone who was so confident and never got it wrong ever, and as a rival club to yours, of course we're going to take enjoyment in the fact seeing him really struggle, and it is and looking as if he doesn't know what to do. And it is
a difficult thing for him now because obviously he's not won a trophy. I don't know if that's the first time in his career or what. I think maybe
he did the immortal thing of bringing up the Community Shield as a trophy they've won this year. Which how bad a season it is. If that's what you bring up as the
absolute MacGuffin of a trophy. It's whatever you need it to be. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for him because he obviously triggered that 1 year extension on his contract. What is he going to do for that 1 year? Because obviously City are trying to reshape the squad, but does he do that for a year and then bugger off? I don't see it, because who
I
then?
thought it was 2 years he was staying for.
I don't know. But I just don't see it, because that project is not going to be finished
like
by the time
mentally. I
it's
think
done.
he's struggling. I don't think he's used to this. He's never really had this in his career, where a team's been so underperforming, and he's not fighting relegation or anything like that, so he doesn't understand that pressure. But for him, it's a massive pressure.
And I know, obviously, you need a great deal of footballing intelligence to play for Pep, so that sort of mitigates it. But you start building a team for Pep, and then he leaves halfway through. That's, even for someone with City's resources, that's difficult, I think, because we see it all the time. They sign a player, they take half a season before they even get on the pitch because it takes them that long to learn. And then if you then 12 months later he's gone, and you've got to start that from scratch with somebody who's not going to be anywhere near the level.
The truth is, his style isn't really working too well. If you look at it, there's not a lot of teams playing that tiki-taka style at the moment. The teams that are playing more aggressive style of football are kind of trending up a little bit at the moment. Maybe the one exception to that is kind of Barcelona, but even this Barcelona team under Hansi Flick, they're a bit more direct.
They don't have any control.
They get it forward a little bit quicker.
Yeah, they don't have any control over a game, Barcelona. They score loads, but they concede loads as well. They're not going to pass a team to death in the way that Pep's best teams do. But I suppose
PSG, they're just all out attack. They're not really tiki taka either. So it's a style that's not working for many teams across Europe this year.
I guess if he was going to go and they were going to bring somebody in, they would want like a young gun manager with big tactical identity and all that sort of thing. And you think Amorim was being looked at. He's gone to United now. Vincent Kompany is probably in the pipeline, but he's only just started at Bayern, and he's not going to leave that job that quickly, you wouldn't have thought. Xabi Alonso has gone to Real Madrid. Xabi Alonso has gone to Real Madrid. But
he'll be away next year. Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's no one work out, unless he wins the Champions League and the league next year. And I think Barcelona are ahead of them currently in terms of
absolutely. Although they are actually trying to sort of redress the balance in their squad. They've actually, they've signed some defenders.
Alexander as a right back who can't defend but is a great attacking right back.
He can defend in Spain. He'll be all right.
It's Champions League.
But I just don't think there's anyone necessarily waiting to go in that job at the minute. That's the only thing.
I think he'll stay because I think he can't admit to himself that it might be too much for him, and he'll be hoping that they hit the ground running, and whenever he's got something to fight for, they'll start performing again next year, and he's able to bring in the right players. And he's done this before, but maybe a bit more seamlessly than he's done it this time. So we'll see if he can come back next year. I mean, you wouldn't guess that City will be like mid-table next year or anything like that. You're probably going to be thinking they're challenging for the title, and that's the way we think about it. So.
Yeah, they are still, looking at the way they've started signing players hasn't really changed from what's got them to where they are. It's just whether, obviously, the core of the really good squad is all being aged out, and it's whether these new lot are going to be as good. Because I look at some of them like Kusanov, just does not look like a serial winner of a player. To look at him, Nico Gonzalez.
But I think Marmoush looks good.
Marmoush looks a player.
I think he's going to be a player.
Yeah.
We'll see once they get a bit of time. Kusanov maybe just is one of those that needs time.
But I guess we want to talk a bit more about Palace as well, because it was a really good performance from them. Obviously, Dean Henderson. We talked about players who might have gotten the Team of the Week but didn't. Dean Henderson would have really contested Raya for Team of the Week keeper if it was a Premier League game, wouldn't he?
Yeah, for sure. He pulled off a lot of saves, especially again similar to kind of Raya in the first half. He pulled off a lot of good saves to keep Palace in it. But he had a great game. Everybody, Palace to a man, they had a great game. All right, you can say they let City of possession, but yeah, that's just sometimes how you have to play against City. But they were always hitting them when they got the ball and went forward. They were a danger, and they were just solid at the back and blocking everything.
Mateta as an out ball to hold up, and Munoz just bombing up and down the right wing. Really good committed performance.
Deserved it. Pleased for them to win the first trophy. It's great for them.
Yeah.
It's good for the league as well.
It is. But obviously, they were fortunate that Dean Henderson stayed on the pitch because of his handball.
Well, I think you and I agree. I'm not sure if Mick gave any comment on it, but I think Dave said the same thing. I think that was a red card.
Yeah,
I think they got very lucky in that one. And I think if it's not a cup final, if it's a Premier League game, maybe he goes for that.
I don't know what mitigation you can have from the fact that Henderson intentionally broke the rules because he knew full well he was on the edge of his box and the ball was outside the box. That's why he batted it like that, because otherwise he would have caught it.
Yeah.
So he intentionally breaks the rules. If he doesn't break the rules, Haaland has an open goal in front of him, and the official explanation was it was going away from the goal. It doesn't matter what angle you've got.
It was going away because that's where he pushed it.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't matter what angle you've got. If you've not got a keeper there, 9 times out of 10 you're scoring. You
don't know where he's touched it. All he needs to do is touch it at a slight angle, 5 feet in front of that, and the keeper either has to bring him down and it's a red card and a penalty, or it's a tap in.
If he leaves it alone, doesn't break the rules, leaves it alone, Haaland just has to sort of tap it over his head, and it might even go in from there. But he'll round him otherwise. So I think it's clear as day a red card. The only reason it wasn't is because it was a cup final. They probably didn't want to do that, and I think obviously the game was better for it, and we get the big story. But it was.
Yeah, but I would be a bit pissed off if I was a City fan, because at the end of the day, they don't care about Palace's story. Well, they just want to win a cup. So
if the roles were reversed and it was City getting away with that red card, the conspiracy
we'd all be raging. Yeah, everybody would be saying it was they paid for it and all that. So of course they would, because that's what people do. So fair's fair.
Yeah, can you tell that I'm stalling? Because I don't want to move on to
but we do need to move on to the other game, which is the other cup final which happened, which was the Europa League final, which I think it's fair to say, Ryan, you were fairly confident you would win. Probably with just the whole idea that we're Man United, they're Spurs, it's a trophy. You've got all that. I
don't know. I wasn't, because there's definitely games that I've gone into, especially in the Europa League this season, where it's just like, I've seen the light. We're getting through this. It's fine. I thought definitely. I think we were probably favourites going into it.
Based on history and reputation, not based on form.
And the situation. Yeah, but going into the game, we had players coming back. Spurs were losing players. We've got the experience in finals. We've got the experience in big games that Spurs don't. No, those were the two main reasons that I thought we'd be favourites. I think what happened was two things. Most importantly, we just didn't turn up. We didn't get going. Secondly, the injury Spurs had meant that their only game plan was to sit back. That was the only way they could play it, and it suited them to a T. They had 3 defensive midfielders. They sat back. They had pacey forwards that they hit on the break. And when they got gifted that goal just on half time, that was, we don't have to do anything for the rest of the game now because United can chuck as many crosses as they want. We've got 3 big centre backs. We'll deal with it.
It was honestly one of the worst games of football I have ever seen in my life. The quality was so bad from both teams. Like, even though, as you say, Spurs were sitting back, at times Man United couldn't string 2 passes together without hitting a Spurs player. And when Spurs did get it, they would try and run it past somebody, they'd get crowded out and they'd lose the ball again. And it was honestly, it was so poor. And I've even seen Spurs fans saying, like, it was the greatest night of my life, but it was a shit game of football. I can accept that,
I mean, I think the main issue was all night Bruno Fernandes just didn't have his eye in at all. He wasn't keeping the ball because he was playing in the deeper role, which he's looked quite good in recently, in my opinion. But he was really rushing things, and I don't know whether it was the three defensive midfielders on Spurs just weren't giving him the time that he needed. But yeah, his switch passing, all of his passing, it just wasn't good. We rely on him to skip a man because too often we've got players who just go to the next guy, down the line, and then back again. Bruno, Casemiro, Lenny Yoro.
Horseshoe of death.
Well, yeah. But yeah, so you got sort of Bruno, Casemiro, Lenny Yoro, occasionally Maguire. They're the only people who are willing to sort of skip a man out to try and.
Tell you what, you should have put Maguire up front much earlier because
he did cause
when
problems.
You did put him up front, he was a threat.
And I think
he's a better striker than Haaland. Because he is just shit, mate. He did nothing.
Yeah,
he can't hold the ball up. He wants a foul every time someone touches him. But he doesn't. His runs just. I don't get what he does. He's lost everything.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening with him. What was frustrating me is that first half in particular, I thought we were pressing well. We were winning the ball back high, but he just wasn't alive to it at all. So that when we did get to the box, there wasn't a cross on. We have to take the extra touch, let Spurs get back, and we couldn't make that count. Whereas
I know Xerxes wasn't fit, but he looked much better when he came on later on. He couldn't have done 90 minutes, but it's ridiculous how bad Haaland is at the moment.
Yeah, but that was the big problem in the first half because we were winning the ball back quite quickly, but just there wasn't the early ball in behind because Haaland was on his heels every single time. Garnacho made a difference when he came on because again he was a bit direct as well, and we had direct running from Garnacho and Ahmad at times. His comments after the game were interesting. He wasn't best pleased about only getting 20 minutes, even though he's not been good the last few weeks. Mount I think deserved.
I think Mount deserved a problem where he thinks after that overhead kick he scored last year, he thinks he's a superstar.
Well, I think he has
in his head that he's a superstar.
He's played a lot more football. He's played a lot more football than he ought to have done at this point in his career because we've needed him to come bail us out from the age of 17, basically. But he's not the finished article yet. I think Mount absolutely deserved the start, but Garnacho came on and, to be fair to him, made an impact. Obviously, we couldn't see it through. I would not be surprised to see him go in the summer though, because he's not a natural fit in the system, and we could get a decent whack of money for him, especially now that we've not got Champions League. And if you told me a year ago, I would have been quite upset to have lost him because I do think he's got a lot of potential.
What do you think someone would buy him for?
I think we can get 50 million for him easy. If you look at other,
I wouldn't pay that if it was me.
No.
But I get.
You look at other play. If you look at players his age, and I think he gets done down because he's been in the team for 3-4 years now. He's been in the team since he was 17, but he's only 20 years old now. But
to see the more game time at that level, some more progression at Premier League level because he's playing at the highest level.
You look at his numbers compared to other players his age, and Lamine Yamal's obviously a complete outlier, but he compares favourably with basically any other winger his age. He's young. If he was at any club other than United doing what he's doing, he would be a 50-60 million pound player. It just because it's because it's United and we need him to. Yeah,
but I don't think he's strong enough, big enough physically. He might improve that as because kids, men, they grow into men usually a little bit towards the 20s. But he's just not strong enough for me for the Premier League.
His decision making needs to improve, but he's got the tools, and he has really at times carried the team. He has taken the responsibility on. He's come from, he was getting the odd substitute appearance where he'd be able to come on, make a couple of runs, and that would be seen as a good performance. And then he was getting crucial last-minute goals, and then he was effectively the starting winger. So he has progressed, but it's just, he's not. I'm not saying he should be in a title-winning team, but he might. If he had other players who were good enough as well, he can grow. So I just
if I was in charge of your lot, I'd say every single player was up for sale.
Oh, absolutely.
From maybe Manu, and I think Manu might get sold because he's not getting played and doesn't seem to suit the system. But apart from maybe one or two, I would say everyone's up for sale. I just don't think any of them are very good, and if they are good, they're not showing it consistently enough, or they don't have the right mental attitude.
I don't think
I'd sell half the Spurs players as well, by the way. So this isn't just like I think both teams are poor, and both need a lot of work. And I did say this to you, and I genuinely think if you'd have put Everton in the form they're in, who are only a few places above you guys in the Premier League, into that game, I think they would have dominated either one of you teams last night, because there just wasn't enough from either team to say that you would have beat them on the game. So,
but I mean,
it's embarrassing.
Yeah, it wasn't. That was the way the final was only ever going to go because of how poor the two teams have been. They've been really good in Europe, but I mean, United in particular, we come up against a Premier League team and we just haven't got that extra half second that we have against the other teams in the Europa League.
Yeah.
And we can't cope with
it. The thing for Spurs, though, is and some of their fans have said, and it's true, though, no one will remember that they finished 17th or 16th, because what they'll remember for this season is that they got Champions League football by winning the Europa League, and they got a major European trophy.
I don't even think...
had actually a better season than Arsenal, ultimately. You can't argue that they've had a better season than Arsenal.
I mean, I don't even think the Champions League football comes into it. It's the trophy. It's because they wouldn't be saying, if they'd scraped 5th place, they wouldn't be saying, "Oh, this is a brilliant season. We'll remember for a long time."
No.
It's all about.
I just mean that then what it helps you financially going forward.
It does, but
for you guys, it's the opposite though. It's almost like the trophy wasn't that important. Maybe that's where the players' attitudes were, but the money that you would generate, like somebody worked to it, that you're 150 million down from where you would have been if you'd won that game last night, or will be by the time you add in all the extra gates you would have got for Champions League football, the money, the sponsorship. And your stock price is down something like 150 million itself as a result of that before the stock's even opened. So that's the effect that had
maybe
on you.
Maybe that's the plan all along. Maybe that's the plan all along, is that Jim's tanked this season, so the stock price is low, so that he can buy the rest.
So he can buy the whole club. Well, I'd heard that there's something like, in terms of outstanding transfers, so like these players that just aren't doing it for you guys, you still owe teams £300 million of transfer fees on that team. And
a lot of them are on the way out or not even at the club.
I think a lot of Man United fans think you're going to go and blow 200 million this summer, and I don't think
it's not going to happen now. No, it's not going to happen without Champions League. I think just by virtue of being a Premier League team, the 100 million that we're looking like we're going to... it's not even 100, it's about 90 million that we're going to spend on Cunha and Delap. We can do that.
I don't think Delap will go to you now.
I think it depends on what Chelsea do. If Chelsea want Osimhen, then I think Delap will come to us.
What if Newcastle go in for Delap, though?
It's...
play for you guys in the Premier League, or pretty much guarantee that he'll get Premier League and Champions League games with us. Or Europe anyway. We're not in the Champions League yet. That remains to be seen, but we're guaranteed to be.
Well, it's whether he wants.
Means we'll play a lot more games than Man United.
It's whether he wants a season as a starter at United or whether he wants a season off the bench at Newcastle. And he'll get games and he'll get starts, but he's not going to be first choice there. Because
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be the consideration. I still stand by what I said a while ago. He should go to Nottingham Forest, but that's not going to happen. But. Anyway, that sort of 90 million, that's spendable anyway, I think, without any sales. And then it will be about properly, aggressively trying to shift some players on. We need another component in midfield. We need another wing back. But equally, we've got to calibrate expectations. Like, this season has been awful by any measure, but there is a danger that next season is going to be judged on us being top 5 again, and it's not realistic for us to make that much of an improvement. I
think
but to say that United should be happy with top half next season is sacrilege, and nobody will accept that. fans won't accept it, media definitely won't accept it. So any progress we make towards it, because it's not instant, will be killed immediately. That's the main issue. I think, if Amorim's got nowhere to hide in the league next season now because he hasn't got Europe, and because the cups, the cups don't get interesting.
So that's the thing. If it doesn't work for him early on, I could see him getting
the cups don't get interesting.
So bad in the league.
The cups don't get interesting until December, January time. So he's got the league to focus on, and that is it. And if he doesn't win 7 of his first 10 games, the pressure will be on, I think. And even that is that's quite a high bar. But I think if he's anywhere below that, the outside pressure will be quite high on him. Even if as a whole we're playing better, we can't. It's going to be difficult for him, and I don't blame him for saying, I'll walk now if you want me to. And the news coming out is that United want to keep him and they want to back him. But we need to really be smart with who we bring in, and we need to, we don't need anything particularly special. We need players who can keep running for 90 minutes, and we need players who are coachable and improvable. And every other team in the league,
you have to be smart though. I'm not sure. I think Delap is a smart one to go for because of his release clause. I think Cunha, might be more expensive than you should be looking at actually. This window but what he does is and his price.
What we were missing.
It might not work.
What we were missing last night was Bruno was off it, and we had nobody else to offer the X factor. Garnacho showed it in flashes. Ahmad showed it in flashes.
Look at
Cunha. If we had Cunha on the pitch, he could score a goal from 30 yards potentially.
But once you've got those two, you're then having to sell players to get money to buy other ones, and I just think you could end up in a situation where you end up getting into next season with almost the same squad, but 1 or 2.
Yeah, but I don't
think that'll work.
I do think the way that we play is mostly good. It's not champion. It's not title challenging quality, but it is mostly good. What we lack is just a bit of creativity in the final third. We don't create good enough chances.
Well enough. I don't think the team in general are good enough at passing in the triangles or anything like that.
I see a lot of that. We didn't show it in the game against you guys, and I imagine that was the game that you paid closest attention to us. Obviously, last night as well. Yeah. There's been a handful of games where we just haven't shown up. The rest of the time, we've played pretty well in the middle third of the pitch. It's when we get to the final third, we can't find the killer move. And because we haven't taken our chances early in the game, the defenders are under a lot of pressure not to fuck up, and they end up fucking up. And that's how we lose the games. If we turn some of that early good spell into a couple of goals, things change. Things change quite a bit. And that's why I think getting Cunha in is important.
I'm not convinced on Amorim yet, but he may prove me wrong next year. What about Ange Postecoglou then, who everybody was saying before this game would get the sack, whether they want it or not?
Yeah, it's interesting
because his second year rather than his first year, like it is Amorim.
Yeah.
So
because the stick that's been used to beat Ange Postecoglou with is that he's got his way of playing. He'll only ever play that way, regardless of what happens, and he just needs to do it better. He's won his trophy, and he's won Spurs trophy for the first time in however long by changing that and by being a bit more defensive and being a bit more careful. And it's whether he is able to adapt that into the Premier League and just look after the ball a bit more or sit back a bit against some teams. Because if he does that, he will be able to get more consistent results. If he plays balls to the wall every league game, nothing is going to change for them.
The danger is that they do you guys with Eric Ten Hag last year, where he won the FA Cup final. Everybody thinks, let's get rid of this guy, but he won the FA Cup final, so you keep him, you back him in the transfer market, and then you've sacked him by Christmas, and you're having the players to work for the next guy that comes in. What if that happens with Ange Postecoglou?
Well, Ten Hag didn't change anything. He changed game to game, but he was only ever about the next result. If Postecoglou can find a way of taking that pragmatism that he had in the latter stages of the Europa League, which is what won him the Europa League, and marrying that with the attacking football that he wants to play in the league, then they can be quite good. Because I do think, you know, ignoring all of the history and everything, on paper, at their best, going into the final yesterday, Spurs have got a better squad than United. They've got some quite good players in there. They do need, you know, improvements in certain areas, but they have got quite good players across the board. It's about how you set them up to play. But it's just he needs to find a way of bringing that pragmatism into his normal game plan. So he doesn't need to park the bus every week in the league. He can't get away with that, but he needs to take those lessons.
Spurs fans, as we know, like when they had when they had Conte,
and he doesn't want to do that himself. But obviously he's drilled them quite well defensively to be able to do that in those games, and it's taking those lessons and saying we're going to do this, but we're also going to be expansive when we've got the ball.
I know everybody's going to know like he's a breath of fresh air because he's honest and all that sort of stuff. Here's my one issue with Ange and it's the same issue I have with Mikel Arteta, that they can't take a defeat. They have to make an excuse for everything.
Yeah.
And I feel that Ange's excuse of the reason they've been so bad in the Premier League is because they got to the final in the Europa League. Now, we were discussing this last night. The Europa League is not the quality it used to be in the past, because it used to be that the Champions League teams that finished third in the group stage all fell in. So a set of bigger teams would suddenly appear. That's no longer happening, and we're finding the Europa League is not quite at the same level.
Yeah.
And realistically, the English teams, maybe the odd Spanish or Italian team, depending on how they finish, will be favourites every year to win this competition. And I don't feel like, you know, he needed to rest players to win, maybe until the last few weeks. And yet the results in the Premier League were still stinking every single week, even when there was no European games.
Spurs definitely had the easier side of the draw compared to United. And apart from Frankfurt, they played some quite beatable teams. I think what happened with both sides is that the league was obviously floundering. They were 12th, 13th when the knockout started in the Europa League. Everybody else was pulling away. The Europa League was not only a nice feel-good story because it's we can win in Europe, we can win these knockout games, the big occasions, everyone remembers them, hooray. And there's the Champions League at the end. It's, you know, they could see a much easier win these 8 games and we get Champions League compared to we've got 20 games in the league and we've got 8 teams above us to get Champions League. It's an easier path. So I think both sides were maybe a bit too eager to write off the league, to say, look at what we're doing in the Europa League, and whichever team lost, it was always going to be a bad look for them. And
I get that it happened in the last maybe month, right?
Yeah.
But I completely deny the fact that Ange was resting players to win the Europa League at any other point in the season.
Yeah.
He wasn't, you know, he was still.
Well, no, but at that point, he literally didn't have a defence. To be fair to him.
Okay, but he did at the start of the season and they never started that well either. No. He also made decisions to bring some of his defenders back when we were all looking at going, they're not fit and they're going to get straight out injured again. Straight out injured again because he was desperate. The game against Chelsea, because it's Chelsea, he brought Van de Ven in. He didn't look fit at all. And I think they did it because it was Chelsea. So I think he's made a lot of bad decisions, and I think it was getting into his head as well. And I'm not sure that's a good thing. Like, if he's under pressure next year, is he going to flip it again? And mate, I'm in the Europa League. You can't say anything.
I suppose
I'll lose every game if I feel like it.
Yeah, you know? I suppose you make the comparison with Ten Hag. And I think United have got a bit more wriggle room to sack a manager after a trophy win than Spurs do, because they did it to Van Gaal, and Van Gaal absolutely needed to go at that point. They didn't feel they could do it with Ten Hag, but I think a large part of that was they couldn't get their man, and then the FA Cup win was the easy out for them on that. Spurs, all of the talk around them, obviously the last time they had a chance to win a trophy was the League Cup final against City a few years ago, and they sacked Jose Mourinho the week before.
Yeah.
So, and that just feeds into the whole narrative about Spurs. So I don't think they can get away with sacking Postecoglou after he after he wins them a trophy. And I don't think Daniel Levy is quite a conservative chairman. He's not got the appetite to deal with that PR, I don't think.
I don't think him in the Champions League and having to deal with Premier League games as well, with their squad, even if they get a few players, is going to cut it next year.
It'll blow up in the face, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go midway through next season, but I just don't think they're in a position now to get rid of him. Because it would be very hard to convince a manager to come in to that if that's how they're going to be treated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our predictions for next week, then wrap up, because really the last game of the season is all about the games of who's going to qualify for the Champions League. So at the moment we have Arsenal and Liverpool are already qualified for the Champions League. Spurs are qualified for the Champions League, but we can ignore their game completely. So the games that we are looking at involve all the teams that could or miss out on Champions League or still qualify.
It's 3rd to 5th we're looking at. 3rd to 5th.
Yeah. So Fulham versus Manchester City. I think we've all went probably for a City win.
We've all gone City. Yeah.
I think there is the chance though, and I've went City as well. But just like Palace beating them at Wembley, Fulham are at home. They kind of have nothing to play for. You just never know.
No, but. I mean, we said this about Bournemouth during the week,
but Bournemouth have been in the beach for weeks.
Yeah, but they stroll past Bournemouth and Fulham are just about
back against
Fulham are the beachiest team ever. They only really put in a shift against Brentford because that's their local derby. I don't see Fulham doing anything in this, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. You're probably right.
And then we've got...
It's a likely City will win.
Yeah.
It's likely Aston Villa's going to win. I think we've all went for an Aston Villa win. There's no way you beat them.
It's going to be quite an ugly. It's going to be quite an ugly game. It's going to be at Old Trafford with a bunch of fans who are fed up that they've spent thousands of pounds to go sleep on a park bench in Bilbao last night. It's going to be ugly, and I think we're going to see a few kids being chucked in as well, and that's not going to be a great experience for them.
So City, we've got get in. And we've got Aston Villa, so that's 4. So we've got one more place for who gets to go in. Now, obviously, the big game of the weekend is Forest versus Chelsea, because if Forest win, they go to 68 points, which might be enough to get them Champions League. It might not. If Chelsea wins, they go to 69 points, which should be enough to get them because they have a much better goal difference than Aston Villa.
Yeah.
So that is really the key game of the weekend, if you like. And then the final one bringing up the kind of rear, if you like, is our own game against Everton.
Yeah.
Pretty simply, if we beat Everton, we get that 5th spot. No matter what. We can't, again, Aston Villa's goal difference isn't as good as ours. Chelsea's goal difference isn't as good as ours. City would be ahead of us in points anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. So... Who do you think it's going to be then?
I've gone 1-0 Forest in that all important one, and that I don't see Villa losing, I don't see Newcastle losing, I don't see City losing. It all rides on Forest versus Chelsea, really. I've gone 1-0 Forest. Chelsea weren't that good against us on Friday.
No,
they didn't need to be, but obviously they've still got Nicholas Jackson out. The young kid that they have up front, not really doing anything.
It'd be a shame if Forest beat Chelsea and then still don't qualify for the Champions League, actually, which is possible.
Well, no, because...
In fact, maybe likely.
Because if
they
Villa
can
win...
get 67 points or 68 points. If Villa win and we
they're
win,
on 69.
City win, they're in 70, so it's done.
Yeah. But I think, end the season.
They have to win and hope that we get beat or Villa get beat or draw or something like that. Yeah.
Obviously, they'll be gutted to miss out on Champions League if that happens. But I think end the season with a win at the City Ground against Chelsea, get Europa League, a competition which, as you say, they would fancy their chances of winning if they keep that squad together, and I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for them, but obviously you don't want to tell that to somebody who's just missed out on Champions League on the day, do you?
And then so it's I would be most worried if I'm a Chelsea fan, but of course we could be sitting here next week. We're in the Conference League, we got beat by Everton, we just didn't turn up or something like that.
Yeah.
And everybody else won. And so we just don't know.
What's the word on Alexander Isak? Because obviously he didn't play against Arsenal, did he? What's gone on there? Have you heard?
I think the rumour was that they were hoping that he would be fit by this game this week, that it was a minor groin strain. But I think the hope was that we beat Arsenal and we don't need to risk him. So we can just rest him up for next season, but that might not be the case now. And that was the big miss for us, because we just couldn't score a goal against Arsenal, and we look a bit toothless in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net, and old man Wilson's just not cutting it anymore. So where are the goals going to come from if Isaac's not playing? That's the question. Joe Linton as well, so our midfield's not quite what it was. So, we're not quite there, and Everton are playing well, but they have to come to our place. They've not been that great away from home, Everton, so there's nothing to suggest that they're going to come and absolutely storm the place up and smash us either. So we'll see. Yeah.
All right,
that'll do us for this week. We'll be back next week for the final match day to review all this, see who ended up in what position, and then obviously how the predictions league went as well. And then I think we'll probably be back the week after that for a kind of season review, if you like, looking
and we're looking at getting the lads back in for that as well,
and stuff like that. Then I could see we probably will have a few weeks break because there'll be no football on. Maybe come back around about the club.
You say that as soon as the season finishes, Man United are flying out to Malaysia for a couple of friendlies, and I think it's worthwhile covering them.
I don't. You're free to do shorts if you want. For all your Man United fans, there's three of them that watch.
It's a bit of a pain in the ass. No, my dad doesn't watch this. We've been he hasn't got time for that.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next week.
All right.
Bye.